Tofodon here again. I'll be clarifying a couple of things from my last video. The two main points are what I defined as the change in meta, from using buffs to the elements themselves as buffs, and the things I said in the Anemo section. Using the example I mentioned before with a DPS like Diluc. In earlier versions, players used to use characters like Bennett and Mona not because of their elements, but because of what they have to offer as characters, namely DMG buffs that amplified damage based on attack. But now, supports like Nahida, Xingqiu, or Kazuha are more prevalent. Why? It's because they can utilize a method of amplifying DMG through their element much more efficiently than other characters. This further emphasizes how elemental reactions have become the widely accepted method of amplifying damage over simple buffs that scale on support character stats. Support characters become prominent in meta using two methods. 1. Having good elemental application. Good examples are Nahida, Xingqiu, or Kazuha. 2. Having insane to ludicrous buff scaling. Good examples are Xianyun and Faruzan, for specifically Anemo, or Furina for any DPS characters. And my dear audience might be saying you just mentioned Furina. She's widely known for her buffs and sub-DPS damage. Doesn't that mean buffs are still a common way of increasing damage in Genshin nowadays? Buffs are still a thing in Genshin today, but what makes Furina special is that she does hydro application, sub-DPS damage, and buffs your team. While her hydro application isn't as good as Yelan or Xingqiu, she still creates room for elemental reactions, which makes her an even better support character. Why have a character that can only provide buffs when you can have a character that both buffs and offers elemental application for reactions? That's why players should decide which reaction is the most favorable to their DPs and look within characters that use that element for a support to optimize for both buffs and elemental reactions. This emphasis on the elemental reactions that characters can offer to team comps is the basis of the element's importance to the game. Next is clarifying Anemo. This one might be very confusing. I said in my previous video that Viridescent Venerer can't swirl Anemo. This suggested that Anemo cannot benefit from the set bonus that shreds enemy damage resistance. I have to apologize, since this is really confusing, but let me clarify. Viridescent Venerer decreases damage resistance of the element swirled by the Anemo. The problem arises in team comps where there are other elements that can be swirled. Hydro, Pyro, Electro, Cryo, because the decreased resistance to the swirled element will override the decreased resistance to Anemo. Let's say you have a team comp of Xiao, Xianyun, Faruzan, and Bennett. You would have 0 characters on the Viridescent Venerer set in this team comp because there is simply no point, because our DPS, Xiao, would not benefit off the swirl. Because the Pyro from Bennett's ultimate will gets swirled, leaving Xiao with no shredded damage resistance. This leaves our Anemo DPS characters with a choice either to stick with the swirl and to use a sub-E DPS like Xiangling or Furina, or using a Geo character that can provide buffs like Zhongli. This severely limits the number of team comps that Anemo DPSs can use, not to mention the lack of Anemo DPS characters, period. Sigh, so sad. I kind of went off on a tangent since I am an Anemo enjoyer myself, but I hope that cleared things up. Bye-bye.